On today's episode of 100 Huntley Street, we talk about the impact of mental health issues on church communities across Canada. Plus, we explore how we can best support the young people we love who might be experiencing a mental health challenge. Hope and healing is possible. It all starts right now.
Hey friends, and welcome to 100 Huntley Street. And on today's program, in fact, actually all this week, we are focusing on a very, very important topic, and that is of our mental health. And we want to start off by saying we believe that healing is possible. But first, it's important that we educate ourselves. Laura, did you know that 39%, I'm going to say it again, 39% of Canadians have been diagnosed with some kind of a mental health condition like anxiety or depression? That's a really high number.
That's right. And it's so important to take the stigma away from mental
100%.
Health issues because so many of us are impacted by it, whether us personally or our family. And we need to be able to talk about it so that we can work together to foster healing. Something I notice as a mom is how many young people are experiencing higher rates of anxiety and depression. I mean, it's so significant. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and this is something I'm hearing constantly. And of course, as I try to support my children, we're finding out that there is a very big link between the issue of mental health challenges in the younger populations and technology use, social media use.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you and I were growing up, we're going to be one of those parents today, you know? When I was your age, so long ago, like, we didn't have access to information. I mean, it took days sometimes to find out about stuff that was happening in the world, and now it happens within seconds.
You had to go get a newspaper.
A newspaper?
Turn on the news.
My goodness, I found subscriptions to old Christian music magazines I used to get back in the day. And by the time you would get the magazines in the mail, the concerts had already passed that were listed in it. So, but today, kids are being hit with so much information. It's too much information.
That's right.
And actually, the country of Australia has recognized this, and I looked it up to make sure I had the stats right. Australia has introduced a world-first social media ban for kids under 16. So if you're under 16, those platforms have to take responsible actions to make sure kids can have an account on their platforms. That's amazing. Yeah,
and many Canadians are also taking action like this. For example, we have some recent research that's been shared across the nation that youth that experience 6+ hours of screen time a day are 2.5 times more likely to struggle with anxiety, 2 times more likely to experience depression, and 2.35 times more likely to experience suicidal ideation or thoughts. And we are starting to get this information, the general public is here in Canada, and you know, they're really pushing parents as well as schools to make a change in how we're understanding the use of social media and digital screens for our kids. I know my kids' schools have now said no cell phones in the school, so they hand them in before they go to class. But there's some things we can do, right, to help our kids. We can set screen time boundaries and say, you know, you can't go over this amount in one day. You can use trackers on the phones. There are apps for that. Another one is promoting real-world connections. You're just laughing.
Figure.
I know.
As kids, again, I'm going back to that guy. We spent so much time outside, whether it's playing street hockey or playing, you know, baseball down at the Diamond or whatever it was. And when the street lights came on, that's when you knew it was time to come inside. So it's really important to have real-world relationships. Absolutely.
It certainly is. And, you know, normalizing mental health conversations. So understanding that we can talk about mental health challenges as part of our regular family conversations. And I do that all the time with my kids. I help them identify if they're feeling anxious, are they feeling stressed or depressed, and what can we do to help support them. You know, I've actually introduced this thing thanks to Pastor Daniel M. This is a sort of a detox we're doing. So 1 day off of screens a week, then one week off a year. So you build on it. And my kids, I've been talking to them about this, and they're ready. They're ready, and it's so important. You know, it's amazing because often I'll reach out to the church and our church to support our boys, and whether it's the church pastors or it's the activities they're doing. And it's so important to, you know, make youth groups a good resource for your kids. Get them plugged in, find out when the events are happening. But not every church knows how to handle mental health challenges that congregation members are facing. And today we have Daniel Whitehead with us. He is the CEO of Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, and they have this incredible course that has bookkeeping for adults, helping pastors, lay people understand how to support one another with mental health challenges and have conversations around mental health. But now they've released something for young people.
Perfect.
And I can't wait to hear what they are doing and how we can become mobilized in the churches to take part in the Sanctuary courses and really help foster strength for our young people.
A super important topic, and there's terms that get thrown around today, and sometimes we hear this term called soul care, and I often wonder what it is. Well, thankfully, we have an expert who's with us right now. Here's Rachel Baribeau to tell us about what soul care is and how we can practice it on a daily basis.
Hi, I'm Rachel Joy Baribeau, founder of I'm Changing the Narrative. I want to introduce you to a concept called soul care. All right. We hear so much talk about mental health these days that we hear the term self-care. I travel and I speak and I talk to people about self-care. And I say, raise your hand if you've thought in the last week about self-care. There's no right or wrong answer. And a lot of times, a lot of people in the room have not thought about it. So let's just first start there. Self-care is doing things that fill your cup. Some people might say self-care is getting your hair done or your nails done or getting a workout in. Well, I want to take it one step further and go deeper and ask you about soul care. What fills the cup of your soul? Is it something you've always wanted to do when you were a kid and you forgot about it? Maybe it's learning to play the piano or learning a new language. Maybe it is playing with your grandchildren. Maybe it is hiking Mount Kilimanjaro. I don't know what it is, but I want you to go on this journey of self-discovery. And you, my dear, you are the thing that you're looking at. You are the thing that you're inspecting. And if you start to look at yourself like this lifelong journey, like what fills the cup of Rachel Joy Baribeau, and it might change over time. And I invite you to write those things down and be intentional about getting in your soul care. The other thing I'll say quickly is that a lot of people think it takes a lot of time to do soul care. No, it might be 15 minutes of deep breathing or reading or napping or working on that skill or that talent that you've always wanted to do. It's not a time thing. It's a what's happening to my soul thing. And so the more you're intentional about this, the better off you're going to be for you, for the people around you, and the world at large. I love you guys.
I want to talk about the power of perspective and how shifting our focus can transform how we face our life's challenges. And throughout the Bible, we see examples of people who chose to focus on God instead of their problems. Let's take Joseph, for instance. Betrayed by his brothers, right? He was sold into slavery, and later he was imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. And Joseph could have given in, right, to bitterness and to despair. But he chose to trust God's plan. I love that. And in Genesis 50:20, he says to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's perspective allowed him to see God's hand even in the midst of his suffering. And then there's David, right? When facing Goliath, the Israelite army, they saw this insurmountable problem, but David saw an opportunity for God's power to be revealed. I love that. In 1 Samuel 17:45, he says, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." You see, his perspective wasn't shaped by fear, but was by his faith in his God. And so shifting our perspective means choosing to see our circumstances through the lens of God's Word. And when we align our thoughts with His truth, we find peace, we find strength, even in the hardest times. Isaiah 26:3 reminds us that you will keep us in perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. And it's so easy to let the opinions of others define you, but only God's Word has the power to shape who we truly are. You know, people can label us as failures, unworthy, or broken, but God says we are fearfully and wonderfully made, we are deeply loved, and we are chosen. So today, I want to challenge you to take control of your perspective. Don't dwell on the size of your problems, but focus on the greatness of your God. And when we choose His truth over the words and the lies of the enemy, we can face anything with confidence and hope. Well, friends, now to give us a fresh insight on how churches across the world are seeking to support those with mental health issues, here's Laura with her guest.
Thanks, Joe. Well, as Canadians face rising mental health issues, especially among our younger populations, the conversation of how churches can better support those with mental health challenges is becoming vital to the well-being of our congregation members and our communities. Joining me now to talk about this important issue is Daniel Whitehead, CEO of Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries. Welcome back to 100 Huntley Street, Daniel.
Oh, thanks, Laura. Lovely to be here.
Yes, well, our team is so thrilled to have you back to give us an update on what you're doing at Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries. And, before we get into some of the youth content that you guys have created in the courses, can we talk a little bit about what people experience who are struggling with mental health issues, even within Christian communities, and what they're experiencing in the church? Is there stigma around their mental health challenges? Are they coming forward to share what their needs are?
Yeah, I think I've been leading Sanctuary for 8.5 years, and I've seen a big shift in people's openness to talking about mental health, which is great. I think one of the challenges that exists often in a church is that there's a kind of unique type of stigma that exists in a church, where people can often conflate what are more complex issues and really reduce them. So someone could say, well, if you have a mental health problem, really you just need to pray more, you need to read your Bible more, and if you do those things, everything will be good. We would say at Sanctuary, often someone's experience is more complex than that. And as a church, it's really important we help people to access the full range of care that they need, because God has made us holistically. God has made us fearfully and wonderfully to not just need spiritual care, but we need physical care, and we need emotional care, and we need community. So I think it can get it can get shrunk to quite a thin subject. And so our role as an organisation is to help people think about it in a slightly more thickened way. How do we thicken our theology of mental health?
So something that we were talking about earlier off camera is that mental health, everybody has mental health. I think that's one of the shifts people need to make. Mm-hmm. And so talk to me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so essentially, if you're anything like me, I was implicitly brought up to believe that, well, you either have a mental illness or you have mental health. And that actually isn't true. The truth is we all have mental health. You may have a mental illness as well, but that's actually separate from mental health, because every human being that's ever lived has mental health. And the question is your mental health flourishing or is it languishing? And life is full of seasons of flourishing and languishing. Our lives are full of that. Jesus lived a life that had flourishing and languishing. And the question is not whether you have mental health, but how is your mental health and what trajectory are you on, and why is that, and what can we do to support you, to help you flourish once more?
So good, and it's so illuminating, and I really love the way you present that and the way your organization presents it. You've mentioned something interesting, that Jesus had a season or seasons where his mental health was languishing. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us about that biblically, what you're referring to.
I mean, if you're anything like me, I grew up in a Christian home. The fact that Jesus is the Son of God is not a big deal to me, actually. I mean, it's a big deal, but I'm okay with that. But the fact that Jesus was fully human, that was more of a revelation for me as I grew up. And I think, Jesus experienced all the things we experience. And when we see Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating drops of blood with the stress and strain that his body was under, knowing what he faced. When we see Jesus on the cross crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me? This level of vulnerability, this is not someone flourishing. This is someone languishing. And I think our experiences of languishing are validated by Christ, because he himself languished. And languishing isn't something we should be scared of. It's a natural, normal part of the human experience. And what we need in seasons of languishing, as Jesus needed in the garden, was we need our friends around us to see us and be with us.
That's so, so important. And that's really where also Sanctuary Mental Health Ministry starts to come in, because your goal as an organization is to equip church communities to be able to walk the journey with one another, people within those communities to be friends. Yes. To actually be those faithful friends who don't abandon each other when we're languishing and when we're struggling. Many people are intimidated by a mental health crisis or a mental health problem, and we might not know how to support someone. So tell us a little bit more about mental health Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, the course that you've created for adults and congregations and pastors and lay people.
Yeah, so we started by creating a course called the Sanctuary course, which really helps the congregation have a conversation that often they don't know how to have. So it seeks to integrate psychology, theology, and a person's story, and creates this safe space and models what it looks like to live into our stories vulnerably. And the beautiful thing about the course, I mean, we launched it approximately nearly 6 years ago, but it's been used by over 300,000 people across 92 countries. It's really grown. So this organisation founded here in Canada has just grown and grown and grown, because our sense was the church wants to help, but very often there's too much fear or stigma to know how to help. So the course really helps build that solid framework and language, that foundation upon which a church can really engage in mental health ministry in a way that's going to help people to flourish.
So profound, and the course is so dynamic. I know it is having a very big impact, and we're very, here at 100 Huntley Street, we're very thrilled about it. We're thrilled about the global impact and the impact in the nation of Canada. You were a pastor for 10 years. You've got a lot of experience in pastoral ministry. And we do see some stats that many people who are struggling with mental health challenges go to their pastors first. Yes. And yet pastors can feel very ill-equipped, and yet they want to help, and that's why they're in the role they're in. Tell me a little bit about your experiences as a pastor in that decade time span with those who were having mental health challenges in your community, and what that was like for you to support those people.
Well, and there is a really interesting stat, which is that 65% of people are more likely to reach out to a spiritual leader before a doctor, and yet only 5% of spiritual leaders would know how to support someone. So there is this disconnect. So my experience of being a pastor, in hindsight, is that I would say probably as much as 80% of pastoral issues in the church or pastoral challenges were directly relatable to mental health. A lot of these things were practically people who were isolated, people who needed to be seen. And, that's why Sanctuary actually believes the church already has a lot of things that can help it support people, like community. Community is a very powerful remedy to the mental health challenge, to isolation. And very often the reason people feel isolated is they don't feel they have the permission to be seen as they are, to be authentic. If the church can find a way to talk about this, then I think we can actually move the needle on this mental health crisis.
Indeed, education makes such a difference, and that humility of saying, God, how can we serve others who are experiencing these issues? We all are affected by mental health, as you said, flourishing or languishing, in different seasons of life, bring either side out. I'm really thrilled that you have created a course focused on youth and young people today. I have two sons, 16 and 13, and it's not lost on me the degree of anxiety and mental health issues and challenges that I see rising up in their generation, whether it's impacting them sometimes or their friends. And of course, we see even more serious issues like mental health challenges leading to suicidal ideation in those younger populations. There are a lot of stats. There's a lot of information you're carrying that would be really helpful for our parents and grandparents watching, so they understand what's at stake and what's going on. Tell us about the landscape of young people today as they're experiencing mental health challenges.
Yeah, well, in the last few years, the data has really started emerging, as they've been tracking numbers over the last sort of 15 years. We know that between 2010 and 2019, the rates of depression and anxiety among young people grew by 50%. We know that during the pandemic, rates of anxiety and depression doubled. So we're seeing the data. Basically, in the early 2010 to 2012, there seems to be this shift in society where young people are increasingly feeling more anxious and depressed, and suicide and suicidal ideation has also dramatically increased since 2012. When you see the data, to be quite honest, as a parent, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
And I think in that moment you have to take a breath and remember that Jesus is Lord. That we're not on our own in this. But I also think we have a responsibility to really do something about this, because I feel as a person of faith, this can't happen on my watch. We've got to do something, and that's really why we created the youth series.
Indeed, we have to do something. And so this youth series is focused on a specific age group. And so tell us about the age group and some of the topics that you're covering and diving into for the youth series.
Yeah, so it's aimed at 11 to 15-year-olds, and that's in part because 50% of mental health challenges that emerge in a person's life begin before the age of 14. So we made the decision, let's get in early, let's give young people a framework, a theology of mental health. Young people are talking about mental health, but often they're talking about it in a purely secular context. So basically that means, well, we talk about mental health with doctors and medical professionals, which is good, we need to do that, but we don't talk about it in the context of our faith and in the church. And I think a danger happens when young people are forced to do that, because essentially they say, this is something God doesn't care about. This is something that is irrelevant to my faith. And actually the opposite is very much true. Obviously God cares deeply about this. So creating this resource is really important for us. Also knowing that young people, 61% of young people would say that adults in their lives don't know how much they're struggling in their mental health. So again, there's this disconnect between adults and young people. So what we want to do is, with these two resources, is bridge that generational gap and get young people the support that they need. So
the adults can be taking the adult course and start to understand, as well as even the youth course, because the reality is they need to understand what the young people are going through. And youth leaders, youth pastors, parents, we could just be really taking, stepping into that course and really taking it in so that we're equipped. One thing that you'd said to me earlier today on our own when we were chatting in our green room was that many young people are more likely to go to a peer for support.
Yes, yeah.
That's
so 70% of young people would say they're more likely to talk to a friend about what's going on for them. And yet we also know that only a third of young people feel equipped to know how to support themselves or a friend. So they're kind of trapped in that sense. And really, the goal is we've got to get young people talking to trusted adults, to people that can actually get them the support that they need. So again, building that shared framework, building that shared language that allows intergenerational conversations is really important to help young people get support that they need.
And what I hear from you a lot is, the power of relationship. So the power of relationship with God, yes, but the power of relationship with each other, a young person having a trusted adult, friends who understand what they're journeying through, and all of us going together, arm in arm, hand in hand, working through mental health challenges together as a community.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is the way God has made us. God is a relationship, Father, Son, and Spirit. We're made in God's image. We as human beings are made here for relational purposes. The Bible tells us we are made for interdependence, not independence. We are not made to be alone. We are made for each other. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges our culture faces at the moment. We've never been more connected digitally, but we've never been more isolated. The World Health Organization says we're on the precipice of a global epidemic of loneliness. Something isn't right. And I actually think the church is called for such a time as this to model and demonstrate and proclaim a different way to be, which is a way to be in community and to care and love for one another.
Daniel, such powerful words. And for someone watching right now, we do have young people that tune into 100 Huntley Street, and maybe they are desiring that community. They are desiring connection, and they need to know they're not alone. In this moment, what would you say to them?
I would say to them in this moment, Sanctuary's created so many resources that we give away, and if having that conversation or opening up that door to get the help you need seems too difficult, maybe just download the youth series, gather a group of people, talk to your youth pastor, say, could we run this? If you go to a faith school, talk to your teacher, can we run this? And that will help you open up the conversations that will allow you to have the conversations you need to have.
It's so good. And, I'm excited that people can take action. So the call would be to adults watching, grandparents, children, younger people, teenagers, go forward to your church. Tell them about this resource.
Yes.
And that we want to get this going in our community.
Yeah, we need to. It's time. It's time to talk about this. It's time to do this. So there's nothing holding you back. It's now there. You can go use it.
I love it. Well, we are called for such a time as this, Daniel, to help young people experience flourishing mental health and move away from the challenges that they are having right now, as well as the adults in our life that we love who are experiencing these challenges. Daniel, I'm hoping you'll stay with us, and in the end of the program, you'll come on and you'll pray for young people and families across Canada who are experiencing mental health issues.
I'd love to.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much for this information, for being with us right now. If you are experiencing a mental health challenge in this moment, please call our prayer partners. They are there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, we have so much inspiration for you to come. Stay with us right now. All this week on 100 Huntley Street, we'll share simple strategies, practical insights, and life-giving advice that will strengthen your mental health. It's all about fostering high levels of well-being and reaching our God-given potential. You don't want to miss a moment.
It hurts every day. Each post feels like a dagger. I thought they were my friends. There's no escape. But thanks to your prayer line, you listened and you cared. I found hope in Jesus.
You know, what an important conversation you guys just had, talking about an issue that affects a lot of people in this country. Yeah. And I think sometimes when you don't talk about things, it stays in the darkness. And when you talk, it sheds light on it. And I think it's important to talk about these things. And I'm just going to be open with you guys. Back in 2015, I went through a really difficult season in my life where for almost 2 years I had to be on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, and I wrestled with that whole thing. Oh, yeah, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor, I shouldn't have to take these things, but it's what I needed, and I'm so glad it was available for me because it totally changed my life, and I'm so glad that we're here today talking about these things. And Daniel, thank you so much for leading this charge and reaching the next generation, because these kids are going through things that we didn't have to go through when we were kids.
Yeah, and your vulnerability and openness, Joe, that is what changes things. So it's being willing to have the conversations in honesty about the way mental health is impacting each one of us or our loved ones. And Daniel, I'm thankful, so thankful for what you're doing at Sanctuary Ministries, because there is so much passion and care, and you really are going to change the trajectory of people's lives through God's strength, but into the future across the world.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, we're so thankful you're with us today. And, for those young people who are watching right now who may be experiencing mental health challenges, Daniel, do you have a word for them, what you would want to say to them so that they can find strength to face another day?
Yeah, I think the thing I would say to anyone watching that's in crisis or struggling right now is you're not alone. This is not something that you've done. This is not something that you need to fix. What you need is a community around you. And I'm so grateful we have a Lord who understands what we've been through, and we have others who've been there and can say this. So you're not alone. That's what I'd say to you.
You're certainly not alone. And if you want to call our prayer partners right now, you can. Yeah. Call 1-866-273-4444. Now, they are trained and equipped to help connect you to counseling services, but as well as local Bible-believing churches, where it's our prayer more people are doing the Sanctuary Mental Health courses so they can support you. Daniel, could we end in a moment of prayer for the mental health of Canadians?
Yeah, please. I'd love to. Yeah, let's pray. Father, I just want to pray for this wonderful nation that you love so passionately. And I pray for your body, your people, Lord. Many of us are struggling. Many of us are suffering. And I pray, Lord, for those in the midst of crisis, for those that are languishing, we would know that our diagnoses don't define us, that our medication is not a stigmatizing thing, that we would know that we are more than a diagnosis, but we are beloved children of God. Thank you, Lord, that you have been where we've been. You have suffered as we suffer, and you know what it is to carry these burdens. So, Lord, draw near to your people and surround us with others that would love us and lead us forward into flourishing again. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a supporter-funded nonprofit organization and member of the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. Thanks to faithful people like you, we are able to continue producing 100 Huntley Street. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R4M2, or visit crossroads.ca to learn more about our programs.
This month, Crossroads is excited to offer you the book, The Hope of Heaven by Sheila Walsh.
Hi friends, Sheila Walsh here. I'm thrilled to share something close to my heart, and that's my brand new book, The Hope of Heaven, How the Promise of Eternity Changes Everything. After years of writing, this one has impacted me like no other. The Hope of Heaven dives deep into questions we all have. What will heaven be like? Will I recognize my loved ones? Even, will my pets be there? I know how much we all long for answers. I pray that when you read the book, You'll embrace the hope of our eternal, forever home, and it'll transform how you live every day.
This book is our thanks for your ministry support. With a gift of $40 or more, or when you become a new monthly partner, request your copy of The Hope of Heaven. Call 1-800-265-3100 or visit crossroads.ca/heaven.